us now is a writer whose articles on topics such as the rise in gas prices and other legislation that is out of Lansing you may have read on mlive.com. Taylor DesOrmeau joins us now on the Michigan Megacast. Taylor, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Taylor?
Doing pretty good. I think it's supposed to be, what, 65 degrees today, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I left my jacket at home today. It was a daring choice. It was 30 degrees when I left the home. I immediately regretted it, but I'll unregret it later on this afternoon. So we're off to a good start.
If it's cold later, it's your fault.
It is, exactly. So, Taylor, you've recently written a couple of articles about the rise in gas prices here in the state of Michigan. And part of that topic of conversation, and we mentioned this earlier on in the program when we went through the top stories of the day in Michigan, particularly about the legislature's passing of legislation to suspend the state gas tax, which of course would not be able to go into effect until a year from now because it didn't receive a 2/3 majority vote. But I think the initial question is, considering that the gas tax in Michigan just on January 1st went up again, making it the 6th highest state gas tax in the entire union, I think the operative question a lot of people have, even going into this, is why is the state's gas tax price so high?
Right. Yeah. So every state kind of has their gas tax set up a different way. So in Michigan, there's a lot of different chunks to it. So overall, in January, the average gas tax in Michigan was about 64 cents. It changes a little bit because of sales tax. But so first off, the first chunk you have is the 27.2 cents per gallon for the state gas tax. Then you have the 18.4 cents per gallon for the federal gas tax. And then Michigan also charges sales tax, so 6% of whatever the total is. So right now, at about $4 a gallon, that's around 20 cents. And then there's also a 1 cent environmental protection regulatory fee. So you add it all up, and we're at about 64 cents. There's a few states that have higher. California, I think, is about 77 cents. There's Indiana, Washington, Illinois have a little bit higher ones than Michigan as well. But yes, I mean, when you kind of stack all those fees and taxes on top of each other, that's kind of where we get to what we are. And so if you have a $4 a gallon of gas, for example, really only about $3.33 is going towards the gas itself and whatnot. Everything else is going toward taxes.
We're joined by Taylor DesOrmeau, a reporter at MLive Media Group. Read his articles online, mlive.com, for more information. As well. And so as you've been looking into the gas tax in the state of Michigan on the rising gas prices, obviously the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is having a significant impact on gas prices across the U.S., really across the world, especially with the now ban on Russian imports of oil here in the United States. But in your reporting, in your investigations, have you been able to really get to the bottom of how gas price fluctuation works, at least here in Michigan, but maybe in general?
Yeah, Michigan definitely reflects the federal kind of changes. There's a few specific ones for Michigan. Obviously, we go to more of a summer blend around May or so. So that kind of changes prices a little bit higher, but that's not a huge deal. In general, though, I mean, the changes that we've seen in the past couple of weeks are really unprecedented. I think, let's see, I know as of March 7th, that week, we raised gas prices nationally by 47 cents. And that's the largest single week gain that we've seen in the U.S. Dating back to the record starting in 1991. So this past week, this March 7th to 14th was a little bit better. I think it was 21 cents that we went up on average. But even that is still the 5th highest weekly raise since 1991. So they're quite large jumps. So right now, the average, talking about regular gasoline, is $4.18 a gallon. That was last week. So the good news is I think that we're expecting it to go down in the next couple of weeks. The price of oil has dropped in the past week, down below $100 a barrel. So the good news is that I think as the price of oil was raising, so was the price of gas, but it couldn't really keep up. So I know a lot of gas stations were losing money. So they're going to try and kind of recoup some of their gains and maybe not drop the gas prices as quickly as the oil barrels prices are going down. But eventually, I've seen some experts say we're maybe supposed to go down 30 to 50 cents in the next couple of weeks. Patrick DeHaan is a great follow on Twitter. He knows everything about gas prices. He's a petroleum analyst or something like that. So he's definitely a great source to follow if you're looking for more.
We're joined by Taylor DesOrmeau. He's a reporter at MLive Media Group, joining us on the MegaCast. All of his articles online at mlive.com. And so even as we're expecting a significant drop in gas prices in the coming weeks, to counteract the significant increase in gas prices over the last couple of weeks, Taylor, the question still remains for the legislature: what can be done to intervene in these gas prices to reduce them even more, if possible, and provide that relief to everyday Michiganders and those that are visiting the state that are definitely having some issues financially at the pump because of these increasing prices. Of course, we mentioned earlier on the legislation regarding the gas tax. The Senate voted 24-14 on Tuesday to advance a measure that would, for 6 months, suspend the state gas tax, and as was also mentioned in that article that I referred to from Bridge, Michigan, because it didn't pass on a 2/3 majority, that suspension wouldn't go into effect for a six-month period until March of 2023. Given that there is that disconnect with the legislature being majority Republican in both houses, in both chambers, and the governor at this moment in time being, of course, a Democrat, where do you see, or at least from what you're hearing from the Capitol in Lansing and from your other sources, this effort going at the state level to further reduce these gas prices going forward, as they're continuing to have effect on everyday Michiganders?
Right. Well, Governor Whitmer has indicated that she plans to veto any kind of getting rid of the state's gas tax, which is the 27.2 cents. Now, she has signed a letter to ask the federal government to put a pause on the federal gas tax, which is the 18.4 cents. There doesn't seem to be any indication that will happen. The idea is that Governor Whitmer doesn't want to get rid of the state's gas tax because that goes towards fixing the roads. And that's one of her biggest priorities, is fixing the roads. And by just halting that and losing all that money for the rest of the year, that's not going to help the effort and not going to make our roads better. Now, another proposal I've seen out there, even from some Michigan Democrats, is to pause the sales tax on gasoline in Michigan, which is the 6% for every dollar. Now, that goes towards schools and other types of things, so it wouldn't really impact the roads, but it would impact other things. I haven't seen a ton of support for that, so I'm not sure if that's something that would pass. And again, that's only about 20 cents per gallon. I think it's going to be largely determined on where gas prices go. If they keep lowering and lowering the next few weeks, I think this is going to kind of fizzle out because people will feel better. Now, if it keeps going on the rise and keeps going out of control, I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on the state to do something, even if it's only lowering it by the 27 cents.
We're joined by Taylor DesOrmeau. He's a reporter at mlive.com, joining us on the MegaCast as we talk about gas prices. Again, he mentioned one of the discussions between both sides of the aisle in Lansing is eliminating the sales tax on gasoline here in Michigan, and that has been so far well received from both sides of the aisle. We had an article that's we have linked on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, right at the top of the page, from Bridge, Michigan, from today, when in their reporting, they said Senate Minority Leader Jim Ananich, a Democrat from Flint, said he would consider suspending the sales tax on gas until the end of this year. Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, a Republican from Clark Lake, he referred to the tax as being dumb from day one and would be interested in eliminating that. So that's something that's at least on the table. We'll, of course, keep up on that as time goes on, as that is a big topic of conversation here in the state of Michigan. Taylor, you also mentioned Governor Whitmer when we referred to the suspension, the bill about suspending the gas tax in the state of Michigan for a 6-month period, that she's more than likely going to veto that. And a story on Governor Whitmer you also did, that she's vetoed more bills per year than any governor in Michigan since 1953. Obviously, the Republican-led legislature and a lot of their bills being, of course, born and bred by Republicans in the legislature plays a key role into that. But other reasons, too, that the governor has had so much legislation come across her desk and has put forth a record number of vetoes. Right.
Yeah. So for some perspective, in 2021, she vetoed about 17.5% of the bills that came across her desk. Before that, no governor had ever vetoed in Michigan more than 8.3% of bills, dating back at least to the 50s. So it was double the rate. It's interesting, though, when you kind of look at veto rates from the past few governors. It used to be fairly low, and then the most vetoes have come from Governor Whitmer, Governor Rick Snyder, and Governor Jennifer Granholm. So I think that kind of points toward a larger trend of there's obviously been more vetoes from the past 3 governors. Some have said that it might have to do with term limits. When term limits went away in the 90s, there was maybe more turnover of legislators, and maybe they didn't have enough time to build up some of those relationships with the other side of the aisle and maybe make deals. So there's a lot of different theories about what could be going on. I don't necessarily think that a high veto rate is just a bad look on the governor. I mean, you could kind of blame the other side for not being able to work with you and putting forth legislation that they know that the governor is going to veto, and it's all just for show.
And so, Taylor, you also did a story recently, a really interesting story on the water levels in Michigan, in the Great Lakes, particularly Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, which are at the lowest in 5 years. And your reporting and your investigation into those metrics, what are some of the reasons that your sources and the information you've gathered has put behind why those water levels are down to their lowest point in 5 years?
Right. We've seen some kind of crazy swings with water levels in Michigan recently. For a while, they were nearing record lows kind of in the 2000s. And you saw that. And then all of a sudden in 2013, it really shifted and we saw some record highs. I mean, and it's easy to see when you go to the beach in the summer and there's only this much beach before you get to the sidewalk. Like, whoa, these water levels are not normal. So there's a big swing in that. So I've seen some scientists saying that there's been a lot more evaporation, a lot more rain over top of the lakes. And those are the big factors that are kind of pushing, that really influence water levels in the Great Lakes. So when there's a lot more of both of them, if one of them peels back even just a little, we can see bigger swings. So it could be a climate change thing that is really causing maybe more swings instead of just normally we kind of stayed a little bit more steady in our water levels. So it'll be interesting to see. We were going higher and higher and saw record water levels in the Great Lakes in 2019, 2020, and even 2021. And now it seems like we're back on the downswing. We're just about to the average level. So it'll be interesting to see if it kind of levels out or if we go back into a decline again.
All of his articles online, mlive.com. We're joined by Taylor DesOrmeau. He is a reporter over with MLive, joining us on the Michigan MegaCast. Taylor, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. What are some other stories that you are working on either that will be coming out soon or that you're working on developing at this time that people should be keeping an eye out for on mlive.com?
Right. Well, I got a really fun one coming for tomorrow. So since I switched positions in November, I'm now a data journalist. So I get to write about numbers for any kind of topic. So we've talked about politics and economics and the environment. And another thing that I'm working on is looking at the numbers of March Madness in Michigan. So a story that I'm working on for tomorrow, we have a graphic that's showing all 7 Michigan teams, so CMU, EMU, WMU, Michigan, Michigan State, Oakland, and Detroit Mercy, and how far they've gone in the tournament each year. So it's interesting to kind of compare and contrast, and I think maybe the thing that surprised me the most was that there was a couple of years where Eastern Michigan went further than any school in Michigan in March Madness. That was back in the 90s a couple times. So it's kind of interesting to compare. And I'm a CMU alum, so it was interesting to see, hey, these are the years that we went to the tournament, and here's how far we went. And Michigan and Michigan State obviously have the top 2 teams in the tournament historically, but they kind of go back and forth. I mean, you look at it, MSU has 8 Final Fours, Michigan only has 5. But Michigan has been to the final 4 times. This is since 1985, where MSU has only been once. So it's kind of interesting to look at the back and forth. And I have a trivia question for you. Do you know what year is the only year since the tournament expanded to 64 teams where no Michigan teams made March Madness, the NCAA tournament?
Since expanding to 64.
Yep, which was in 1985.
Right.
It only has happened one time.
I don't know that year. I'm guessing it was sometime in the late 90s.
Yes, you are correct. 1997. None of the 7 teams made it, but interestingly enough, they made up for it in 1998. as 5 of the teams made it, and 4 of them went to as far as the second round. So Detroit Mercy made it in '98, Eastern Michigan made it, Michigan State, and Western Michigan all made the tournament. So it was a big year the following year, and they made up for not having any success in 1997.
Yeah, really interesting story, really interesting numbers there from you as well. As we're joined by Taylor DesOrmeau, data reporter with MLive Media Group, joining us on the MegaCast. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day.